All right. Hopefully everybody's tuning in out there and can hear us okay. It is the first Wednesday of the month, and that means it is time for Happy Hour with the International Society of Fire Service Instructors. I'm extremely happy to get to be here with all of these folks. I assure you, I'm not going to be doing much talking today. I am by far the most underwhelming character on all of the different talking head screens you see here today. We've got a fantastic program for today. My name's Brad French. I'm a captain in Dayton, Ohio, and have the privilege of frequently getting to host these happy hours. We're doing it a little bit different today. This is kind of a happy hour and a little extra, more of a webinar format today, but we've got some really, really important, really interesting subject matter today and guests today as well. So thank you very much for joining us. We have a lot of folks that come to each and every happy hour that we do on the first Wednesday of every month, and some of you maybe you're tuning in for the first time. So welcome, and hopefully you're getting engaged in the ISFSI. Hopefully everybody tuning in is members, and if not, definitely go to isfsi.org, to our website, take a look around at that. We're always looking for more like-minded individuals that are very passionate, very enthusiastic, very focused on fire service instruction, just like we all are. So as far as today goes, the title of our happy hour today, Learning from the Past, bringing line of duty death reports from paper to your classroom. And what an incredibly important topic. I'll just, as a point of kind of personal privilege, I will say this is one of the topics in the fire service that I am the most passionate about. And really, if I'm being honest, I have one person to thank for that, and that would be Chief Billy Goldfeder, from attending some of his classes early in my career and really catching fire, no pun intended, on the importance of that topic and how critical it is to study those line of duty death reports when they come out. So Chief Goldfeder is a mentor of mine, and I can't get much credit on that. So this is certainly a topic that I'll be very attentive to every day on a day. But let's get rolling here. I'm going to kind of blank out my screen. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat. So as things come up, if you want to see what I'm thinking about, if you have any questions, I'm going to kind of keep an eye on that stuff as they're all going to kind of break from time to time. So with that, I'm going to be quiet, and I'm going to take over to Joe Pronesti from Area Fire in Ohio.
Thanks again for about a month, and this is again a topic that someone like me in my shoes wants to be able to have my training officer or my assistants be able to develop and disseminate to our troops. And before we get going, I'd like to go ahead and go across and have the rest of the panel introduce themselves. I'll start with the president. Pete Van Dorp, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Good afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon, everybody. Really, thanks. The folks we have on today are busy people, and I really appreciate that they're taking the time to spend an hour and a half with us. And Joe, I want to thank you for putting this all together. I know it was a lot of work and a lot of effort, and I'm going to shut up now so we can get to the important part of the program. Thank you all.
Chief Goldfeder.
So I'm Billy Goldfeder. I'm Deputy Fire Chief at Loveland Sims Fire Department, Ohio. I sit on the boards of the National Fallen Firefighters and the IFC. And together, Gordon Graham and I founded Firefighter Close Calls back in the mid-90s. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me. If you see a little movement in the background, I'm on vacation, and so I'm sitting out on the deck. Not bad, but we're waiting for the storm to come in, so we'll see.
Thanks, Chief. Gordon Graham, Mr. Graham.
Gordon Graham here, and longtime friend of Chief Billy Goldfeder. I was a state highway patrolman out in California for 33 years, been a lawyer for 39 years, and co-founder of Lexipol, a company designed to standardize policies, procedures, and training in American public safety. And it's an absolute honor to be here to mirror the comments of the others. The errors you're going to make can be predicted from the errors already made. If you're not learning from the past, you're an idiot. And we've got to get this message across that you need to learn from the past. And so I'm looking forward to this.
Okay, thanks. Tony Carroll.
My name's Tony Carroll. I am currently a captain shift commander with the Louisa County, Virginia Fire and EMS Department. Central Virginia between Fredericksburg, Richmond, and Charlottesville. Last May, I ended a 29-year career with the DC Fire Department, where as a company officer, I got involved in Mayday Mondays. Maybe you've heard of it. And really was designed to train people on firefighter survival topics, whether it was rapid intervention, rescue, or self-survival. And it's kind of grown into now a campaign. Social media, fire engineering has picked it up. And really, it's the mission there is to honor someone each month who has passed, who died in the line of duty, learn from it, and then train on it. So again, these guys are all people that I've kind of learned from and taken stuff from, and I really appreciate being here.
Thanks. And Ian Bennett.
Thank you very much. Ian Bennett. I'm the National Local Assistant State Team Coordinator for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Retired after 33 years in the fire service in 2019, April 2019, to come on board basically full-time with the fallen firefighters. Run 3 different programs. We do the line of duty outreach. So we have a taking care of our own program, which prepares departments for serious injury, line of duty death. Our local assistant state team program, which helps families and departments through the process of line of duty death, and including funerals and benefits and that kind of stuff. And then also a uniform support group, IC to IC, chief to chief, company officer to company officer, to help those positions with the line of duty death. It is truly an honor to be here with these individuals. A huge component of the mission of the fallen firefighters. We have three really big areas. One is to honor and remember firefighters killed in the line of duty. 2 is to support the families and the departments through the recovery process. But a third huge piece of the organization is to educate and prevent line of duty deaths in the future. So truly an honor to be here, and thank you.
Okay, so why are we here? Well, I kind of pushed this because of this, and I'll put this on. This is our only little graphic, little picture or whatever, but this kind of sums things up for me. And I will share my screen here. Let's see here. Okay. So all right. So all of us that are passionate about the service or learning mistakes, we've all seen, been in an FDIC class, been in an article or whatever. The gentleman there you see on the left of the screen, George Santayana. He was a Harvard philosopher who said, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." We all say it. We all, again, saw it and read it in classes and quotes. The gentleman there, the other gentleman there on the top right of the screen, Lawrence Gonzalez, wrote a wonderful book, and it's really because Gordon Graham has a book list. And so I was at a conference, and he had this book list, and I believe this guy's book was on there anyway. In that Deep Survival, Who Lives, Who Dies, and Why, it says commune with the dead. I'm like, what in the heck is this guy talking about? Well, we talk about line of duty deaths. They're gone. We have to learn from their mistakes or what happened with the building they were in, and move on and learn and respect their legacies and what took place in their life to move on and honor. And then the bottom picture is what we're all about as instructors. This is a picture that was taken my very first day in the chief's position in my town. We hired, swore in 3 firefighters, and they're all young. And that's what we're all about, is to teach these new members, about the line of duty deaths or about lessons and how important it is. And in 2021, there has got to be a different way, a better way on doing it. And that is why we are here. And to educate training officers and maybe get some traction or get some momentum going on improving. And everybody that's on this panel does something to that effect. My goal is to get all the brains together and then get it out. And what that is, we're going to talk about today. So as we get going, let's talk about the history of NIOSH reports, because that's where everybody goes. There's a line of duty death, and throughout all of our careers, this is what bothers me today that I want to see an end to or an improvement on. So many times, XYZ fire captain has to say, okay, I got to do something with my crew today. It's 32 degrees below zero. I got to do something to keep them occupied. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll print out a line of duty death report. They print out a line of duty death report. They don't really research it. Maybe they scan it, whatever. Okay, yeah, this looks good. Throws it on the kitchen table, tells everybody to leave, walks away. They get their CE and they move on. That can't happen anymore. That's got to change. We have a different dynamic of young people in the fire service that learn differently, and there's ways and software and things out there that we have to bring to them incorporating these things. So, but first we have to know where we were at before where we're going. And so I'm going to let Chief Goldfeder talk a little bit about how the NIOSH reports got started, his relation to the NIOSH report and what he's done with those reports, and then we'll go from there. So Chief, if you don't mind, tell our attendees a little bit about NIOSH, where it came from and where it's at now. Muted, Chief.
Sorry about that. You can hear me now, Joe?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so NIOSH started in the 70s under President Nixon, and it actually started based upon toxic substances for the worker. It over time evolved into workplace investigations. Now, what people don't understand is NIOSH is not a regulatory agency as far as the investigation. They can't go in and fine. Matter of fact, you can tell your department can say, we don't want you to come in, and that has happened on some relatively well-known line of duty deaths. Now, of course, when you do that, you're only opening yourself up wide for suspicion, and why wouldn't you want to share what happened? So while it happens occasionally, it does not normally happen. Now, NIOSH is broken into two parts from the firefighter line of duty death investigation program. One is the medical and cardiac side, and that's based out of Cincinnati. And then there's the traumatic side, which is based out of Morgantown, West Virginia. The organization has met over many years with financial challenges. A number of years ago, the IFC got together, pulled together a group of different fire service organizations, including the IFF, ISFSI, and many others. We put together a white paper on why NIOSH needed more people in the firefighter investigation side, and it worked. We did get some increased staffing. We also pushed for people with fire service backgrounds. Not to say that the scientists that were working there were not good or qualified. They were great, but you got to sort of understand the language, the lingo, the job, so to speak, to have a better understanding of why things go wrong. NIOSH is challenged with that. You know, sometimes people say, why don't we have like an NTSB board, or why don't we have this or that? I've always been an advocate that we create another group that either mirrors or alongside NIOSH, which would be a National Firefighter Investigation Board, which would be regulatory. But these days, to form anything regulatory literally takes an act of Congress, and that's not going to happen in this environment. So what we have to do is work with this voluntary program, which really does a fine job, and their reports are phenomenal. And you'll often hear people say, oh, the reports are all the same. Well, that's bullshit. open up the report and read it. Every firefighter death is a little bit different, although many of them carry some common denominators, whether it's failure to do a size up or poor command and control, poor discipline, etc. So Joe, look, I made in my notes, I wanted to make one more comment before I pass it back to you. And you made a comment before we went online that really struck well with me. And you said, here's a picture of 4 young firefighters that we just brought onto our fire department, and they don't know anything about line of duty deaths. And my response back to that is, but there's never been an easier or a harder time for them to learn about line of duty deaths. The easiest is because they can learn everything they need to know right here. And they're on this all the time. I'm 66 years old. I'm on the damn thing all the time. So I guarantee you the kids are on it all the time. So all they need to do is subscribe to the NIOSH alerts. They can go to fire engineering. They go to firefighter close calls. They can go to fire rescue 1, any of them. And we're pumping those reports out when they come. But you can subscribe directly at NIOSH and they'll send you an alert when a new report comes out. And then what you got to do is personalize it. Again, and I don't want to go too far off here, but I've said for years, and I continue to advocate, and you're a fire chief, there's many other chiefs on this call, and Gordon is a former commander with the Highway Patrol. In the police side, it's the sergeant. In the fire side, it's generally the lieutenant with few exceptions, your first line company officer. And that is where all your investments got to be. So if you want your firefighters on the line to learn about line of duty deaths, it's all about your company officers. And that comes from the chiefs above them using discipline. And I don't mean you're in trouble discipline. I mean every time there's a line of duty death report comes out, a bell goes off at the Elyria Fire Department, at the Loveland Fire Department, the Chicago Fire Department, Dayton Fire Department. It says, hey, there's a report out, and here's what we do when that report comes out. So I won't go too deep into that, but I really believe that I talked to so many fire chiefs, and if you gave me a list of your 10 biggest problems, I'll show you that 9 of them were probably solved by a positive or negative company officer either doing or not doing their job. So to answer the theme of today's happy hour, if you want to solve the problem in educating your firefighters on line of duty deaths, you need serious company officers who get it, who do a little bit of research. When they find firefighter X died, Google firefighter X, learn about the spouse, learn about the kids, learn about the department, go to YouTube and look for some videos about the department. Once they see some commonalities, hey, he's got kids like me, or she's got a husband like I do, you know, that kind of thing, then you start to personalize it. And it's a very normal human thing when things become personalized and we start to realize it can be, I can be like that, or it could be or impact me, and people tend to get serious. And we see it every day, and I'm not getting political, but you'll see people who are not pro vaccines, but then from their hospital beds, they're begging their families to get the vaccine. So again, not being political, but when you turn it into something that may impact you, that vehicle may strike you on the interstate, that roof may collapse at the building you're going to, and that's pushed by a good company officer using discipline and sort of a take no prisoners attitude. We're going to study this line of duty death. That's how we solve the problem that you've raised to us today, Joe, at least from my perspective. Thanks.
Yeah, and that's going to carry us into, again, how we then take today's modern technology and put things together. But Gordon, one of the things that, you know, you talk about so much is, again, the importance of learning. And the difference is, I guess, you know, you talk to people in the military and the police and the fire side. Is there any difference between how maybe the military or law enforcement learns from past, you know, or from line of duty deaths than say fire does? And the reason why I think about this is that I have friends that are in the law enforcement side, and that when they're going through their training or in the police academy, they look at hours after hours of YouTube videos of dash cam footage of a poor police officer being killed at a traffic stop or whatever. One of the most dangerous things, you know, I guess that the police, again, I'm not a policeman, but one of the most dangerous things they say is a traffic stop. So a young police officer is inundated with that, at least what I've been led to believe at the academy. Fire, we don't, at the academy, we get like 3 hours of building construction, okay, if that, or an hour of fire behavior. And we're trying to smash all this in, but yet we don't really get into the graphics that maybe law enforcement or military gets into, to where that 20-year-old kid I just hired that's out there on the app floor cleaning trucks goes, ooh, wait a minute, man, that looks bad. I don't want that to happen to me. Not to downgrade it, but go ahead.
You know, you raised an interesting point. When military people die, it's usually because of hostile action. Somebody kills them. When cops die, too often it's hostile action. Somebody kills them. When firefighters die, it's usually internal negligence. We ended up causing our own problems. And I think that with the external threat, military people and cops look at it differently, because those are unknown unknowns, how you're going to die that day. And so they talk about it a lot. Whereas you guys, you know, the fire side of things, well, you know what? Firefighters are just going to die. There's nothing we can do. They always have, they always will. There's nothing we can do. And I'm fed up. I am really fed up, because sadly, over the last couple of years, we've seen more and more firefighters being shot, being assaulted. I hope that trend leaves. Sadly, I'm fearful that it might continue, particularly if terrorism becomes popular over here. But we've got to leave with this thought. Bad things do not have to happen in our world. Black swans versus gray rhinos. One of my goals here today is to get you to drop me an email or visit my website, lexipol.com/presentations, and get my reading list. There's a lot of good stuff on there. Lawrence Gonzalez, by the way, Deep Survival, Everyday Survival, Surviving Survival. The guy's a brilliant writer. But there's 2 other books on there you need to take a look at. The Black Swan by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, and The Gray Rhino by Michelle Wucker. Let's take them one at a time. Taleb's great book, 1597. This Englishman goes down to Australia, and he sees this big black bird that looks like a swan. But in his world, where he comes from, swans are white. So he asked the Aussie guy, what kind of bird is that? It's a black swan, mate. To the Englishman, that was an unknown unknown, something he never even considered, the possibility of a black swan. Fast forward to 20 years ago, 1 month after September 11th, Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld was asked this question. By the way, he passed away last month. This is in his obituary. Secretary Rumsfeld, what's your greatest fear in the war on terror? My greatest fear are the black swans, the things we haven't even thought about yet, the unknown unknowns. On the other hand, Michelle Wucker's got this great book called The Gray Rhino, these massive 4,000-pound beasts that are coming right at us. We can see them coming, and we refuse to get out of the way. I've never done your job, but I sure have studied your tragedies. There are very few black swans in your world. Most of the deaths, most of the GBI, the great bodily injury suffered by fire service personnel, are gray rhinos. They're coming right at us. We can see them coming, and yet we refuse to get out of the way. And I'm the outside idiot here. I've never done your job, but I'm angry. You know, these things do not have to happen. There are very few black swans. It's gray rhinos. How do you die? Number 1 cause of death, heart attacks. And then you read the NFPA data, where too many of these heart attacks, grossly overweight, out of shape, heavy smoker, over 70, long history of recent heart. This is not sneaking up on us. We know this guy's got cardiac problems. Vehicle operations. You hear 6, 7, 8 out of 10 firefighters who die in vehicle tragedies are not wearing seatbelts. Vehicle operations. My gosh, you backed over 3 firefighters in the last month? What are we doing here? Well, you know, well, Gordon, that's, you know, bad things are just going to happen. No, there are fire departments around America that have never backed into a damn door. They've never backed into a firefighter. Why? Because they understand this is a problem, and they put together a control measure, a policy, a procedure on backing operations to prevent that from happening. You know, this whole issue on getting burned to death by buildings. Again, I'm the outside idiot here, but I read enough of these final reports where people knew for sure, this building is fully engulfed and there's nobody in there. You got the owner of the store outside saying, thank God I had no customers and all my crew is here. Well, we're going in. And if you successfully put the fire out, which many times you do, what's the insurance company do the next day? They tear the building down. So why are you taking this risk when it wasn't necessary? Well, Gordon, it ended up okay, only because we got lucky. You cannot rely on luck. You have to rely on systems that are properly designed, kept up to date, and fully implemented. Very few black swans, lots of gray rhinos. These are identifiable risks. They're manageable risks, and we're not learning from them. Let me close with this, and I'll look forward to another opportunity. You walk up, take a look at my profession. We have nothing like NIOSH. I wish we did. You know, I've been working 10 years on trying to get the NTSB approach on line of duty deaths inculcated into law enforcement operations, and I'm running up against a blank wall here. They won't do it. But, you know, you walk up to 100 chiefs of police and ask, what were the lessons learned out of Ferguson? You get a blank stare. You walk up to 100 chiefs of police. What were the lessons learned out of Trayvon Martin? You get a blank stare. You walk up to 100 fire chiefs. What were the lessons learned out of Coleraine Township where 2 people dead? You get a blank stare. You walk up to any pilot and mention the name Sullenberger, and that pilot will tell you exactly, precisely how to land a plane on the Hudson River. The learning management system inside the aviation community is much more robust than the learning management system we have in public safety. We can change that, folks. This group of people right here can change that. Later on today, if I get a second chance, I want to talk about my 6-step approach to making the knowledge of all the knowledge of one. You know, your black swan is somebody else's gray rhino. Just because it's never happened to you doesn't mean it can't happen to you. We have to study the industry, not just our specific department. But you're absolutely spot on, and I really hope that people listen to this. As I look at the numbers growing here, 51 people watching this. This is not 51 people. This is potentially 5,100 people. If every one of these people who's watching this, they can go back and influence 100 other people, you know what? This is an identifiable risk. It's a manageable risk. We can do something about it. We can change the world here. And I'll turn it back over to you, Chief.
Yes, and before I go over to Ian and talk about National Fallen Firefighters, one of the things one of the issues when we talk about heart attacks, this is what we're battling, is that every young firefighter knows what to do about heart attacks. If you go upstairs in my fire station where I'm at right now, there's a beautiful weight room paid by a grant from the government. So these young kids, they come in the job knowing that I got to go and I got to work out, and they're getting giant muscles and they're running and they're doing all that. I wish we could take that same approach to knowing building construction or fire behavior, because these young kids know how to go upstairs and run on that treadmill until they puke, or, you know, or get these big monster. Look at every firefighter, young firefighter now. They're built, and that's great. Male, female, doesn't matter. They're like athletes. So we're working towards that. Well, how do we do that and get them to know about, again, like I said, flashover or fire behavior? And so you're right. The one other thing before, again, I turn it over to Ian that bothers me a little bit is that, yes, traumatic firefighting deaths they say they're going down, or there's some talk of, well, a very good respected friend of mine has a whole course on, you know, data, not drama, it's called, and it's good stuff. It's great stuff. But I don't want the wrong impression. I don't want young firefighters to get that, well, we're not dying. And then they forget about what took place on 23rd Street in 66 in New York, and they don't want to learn the lessons there, or wall bumps. And so there's a happy medium here, and that's where it takes us to try to get out there a package to deliver. Ian, one of the things that I hope our listeners or our viewers look at is there is one of the best hidden secrets out there is called IC to IC discussion, and it's through the National Fallen Firefighters, and it's basically Ian sitting down with a commander from a line of duty death. Ian, talk a little bit about what National Fallen Firefighters are doing in the education of line of duty deaths and how they can find those wonderful videos.
All right, there's a couple different areas. The NFF Connect series you're referring to, we do the fourth Thursday of every month, and that was actually born out of the pandemic. With the pandemic, we kind of got cut short on travel. We weren't able to go out and teach and do classes and that kind of stuff. So we came up with some virtual training type stuff. Tony mentioned that the May Day Mondays and these types of things out of it. And we came up with on the fourth Thursday of every month doing a Connect series where we highlighted, at the time, the intent of it was to highlight the IC to IC program as a newly developed program to support ICs that experience a line of duty death, match them up with another incident commander that has experienced them and help them through the process. And what it's blossomed into is just an incredible an opportunity and the courage of these ICs. And it's not limited incident commanders. We're going to branch into chiefs and company officers as we move into this. But the intent, and Billy hit on it, is to humanize, is put a name to a face and really show the impact. So what they do is they go through, first of all, in the primary is they talk about the firefighter or firefighters that died in the incident. And again, to Billy's point, these are people that are married with family, with kids, this kind of stuff. And what is the impact on that? And to show that. Then they go through the incident and talk about it, and it's basically a living NIOSH report because they're taking the lessons learned out of that, what happened in that event, what lessons were learned out of it, what impacts did it have on the department, what did the department do in response to that, and then take it a bit further is what are the impacts on the IC? What does that person go through in a line of duty death? And it's huge. I mean, you got the family and department's impact and not minimizing any of that, but that incident commander that was in charge of that incident where things went wrong, it is a huge burden on that. So it talks about that as well with it. So they become pretty good. We do them every month, 10 months. We don't do it obviously November, December. Those are Thanksgiving, Christmas. And we just focus on a specific incident. They run about an hour. They're recorded. I know there's quite a few departments that use it as training tools. You can go to firehero.org is the website, search under NFF Connect, and the last 10 or 12 are on there. This fourth Thursday, which is coming up in September, we'll be talking to Westlands, Michigan. They had a firefighter die in a strip mall fire, and that's going to be the highlight of that one. So definitely encourage anybody to look at that. I will mention one other quick program while I got the soapbox here. We do have another proactive program that educates and tries to change the culture. Everyone Goes Home program. You go to everyonegoeshome.com. The advocates have several training programs with focus. Gordon talked about changing the culture of the fire service. It's not okay to die. That's not what is supposed to happen. So out of the life safety initiatives came the Courage to Be Safe program. And it talks exactly about that, is it's not okay, that we got to change the culture of what we do. So we got that. We've got leadership, so everyone goes home. That examines case studies of line of duty death. Again, it brings it from paper into a classroom environment where it's discussion and learn from these cases out of it. And then we have leadership, accountability, culture, and knowledge. And it's the same type of things. It use line of duty deaths and what are the impacts on leadership, culture, accountability, and knowledge, and what impacted and what caused that based on those factors. So there's a couple programs we use to try and get this out and try and prevent these.
So we'll take it over to Tony Carroll. Another, I think it's a wonderful thing. And again, it's trying to get the puzzle together. Is Tony Carroll has on fire engineering called May Day Mondays. And it started as like a handout or something you would put on your board of, I don't know, like, how to handle your SCBA in an emergency, or doing different procedures or low profile or whatever. And now it's turned into where you're doing something also, Tony, where you're sitting down and interviewing ICs or firefighters involved in line of duty death. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about what started your thought or your movement towards the May Day Monday, where it's at now, and how we can kind of put all these things together in your opinion.
Oh, thanks, Joe. So May Day Mondays was really born out of my time as a company officer, and I wanted to do some hands-on training with the guys on firefighter survival, right? It could be negotiating an entanglement, like you said, SCBA stuff. I was a truck company guy, so we had the rapid intervention equipment. So I wanted to make sure we trained on that. In DC, we worked 24/72s. So we worked one day a month, right? One Saturday, one Sunday, one Monday, one Tuesday. So every Friday was Flashover Friday. So my buddy's like, hey, why don't you make Mondays your May Day stuff? So when every Monday that I worked, the crew, we would try and do a hands-on thing. That kind of carried on for several years as I went from company to company, and then I got promoted to captain, and I was a captain in the safety office. As a safety office, you don't have a company, right? And we have one safety officer per shift. So there was a chief assigned to the station, and he was like, Tony, why don't you take this like citywide? I'm like, okay, well, how do I do that, right? How do I reach out to everybody, especially now with everybody, all the kids and their phones and stuff? So our chief in charge of the public affairs, I got with him and we put it on our social media. So it was basically a one pager that kind of went over a skill and tried to tie it back to an incident, a line of duty death. And the idea is that everybody's going to get it on their email. We used the DC Twitter and Facebook and got it out, tried to get it out to as many people as possible so that the officer could take it and drill with their members on it. I did it every Monday. So it went from one Monday a month to every Monday, 52 Mondays. So it kind of got a little watered down, right? It kind of got the repetitive and stuff. And so about that time, I also hooked up with Chief Halton at Fire Engineering, and he's like, send it to me. We'll put it in Fire Engineering. So about that time, I rolled it back to once a month, and Fire Engineering and the fire department would carry it out every first Monday of the month. With that, you got, again, you got talks about a line of duty death, and the line of duty death happened in that month. Maybe not that year, but that month, right? Like I just interviewed yesterday, I talked to some guys from Wilmington, Delaware, who had a line of duty death in September of 2016. And so next Monday, actually, yeah, next Monday, it'll come out through Fire Engineering, and you'll get a little bit about the fire. You'll get a link to the NIOSH report, and then it will also give you a skill drill to do with your people. That skill drill, it talks about air management, right? So then we're going to give you some things to do for air management. A couple of months ago, I'm thinking, hey, how can we bring this home even more? We added the podcast. So again, I'll interview. I got through the contacts that I made in the fire service, reach out to a fire department that had a line of duty death, find somebody that will talk about it. They come on the podcast for an hour, hour and a half. Yesterday's was actually 2 hours because these guys were, they were really giving us some really good stuff from their experience that they had, and that they wanted to make sure that the fire service hears them. And so we get the podcast. Last month we did Mike Lombardo from Buffalo. He talked about Chip McCarthy and Jonathan Kroom, who died in a basement fire. We did Coleraine. Gordon Graham talked about Coleraine Township. We talked to the chief from there. Great stuff. And I think it just adds that. It brings it home. The focus of the talk is to find out about the people. Like Ian said, right? You try and find someone. The first one I did was with Chief Van Dorp, and man, the stuff we got from him, the connection we made to Arnie, and it was great. It was good stuff. And we talked about fire behavior. Again, the connection we have through UL and everything, it really brought the fire behavior stuff home, and it gave the guys a drill that they could do back at their firehouse that maybe connected them to this line of duty death or other line of duty deaths that they know about. And I think I think it's great, but it really it takes care of that passion that I have for doing this and getting this out. And now we've added this other part with the podcast. So I think it's really like I said, it drives the point home. These aren't crazy incidents. They're not stuff that people can't relate to. I mean, you talk about Coleraine, that was a 2-story colonial, right? You talk about the Buffalo. Buffalo was a market, a mixed use, 2-story. No, there wasn't a big crazy building. Wilmington's a row house. I mean, so these are places that I think everybody can kind of relate to. And it's, again, so I hope that it adds something to this. One of the things that really drove me is we said we will never forget, right? We always say we'll never forget. Well, we don't even know about it. We can't forget it. We don't know about it. So whether it's a Sheltra, Richard Sheltra from North Carolina, who died in a strip mall, or all these guys who have passed away. We all know about Worcester. We know about Charleston, but do we know about Pineville, North Carolina, and those kinds of things? So that was kind of my drive, was to try and not not Monday morning quarterback them, but to present them hopefully from what they saw that day, and then hopefully drive it home.
Pete Van Dorp to President. Well, President, thanks again for allowing us to do this, Pres. But I guess from a society standpoint, and instructors, that again, that's what it's all about. The society's for. What do you see is lacking when it comes to line of duty deaths or getting that information out? Or what are you hearing from people other than me bugging you about it, that you would want to change in your role as president to try to improve?
Well, we're doing it here today. And Tony was the last one to speak, and I'm very familiar with his program and the work that he's doing. So I'll use that as an example. It's certainly not the only one, the work that Ian's doing and Billy in general. But look at what he's doing. He's taking this, what is often this dry, and they are very similar, these reports, and they should be very similar. That's part of what gives them their power, is that they're organized, in a certain way, and they're very methodical. But he's personalizing it, right? And he's tying a skill drill to it, and he's getting the stories of the people that were, affected by it, and especially when they happened years ago. I think it's so critical that the message that gets across with that is that the pain never ends, the suffering never ends. Every day, right? One of my mentors in the fire service, Bobby Hoff, his dad was killed in the line of duty on Valentine's Day. And part of, every day of his life is February 15th, right? It just doesn't ever go away. The impacts last forever. And the kind of work that these guys are doing help drive that home, right? These aren't just abstract things that happen to somebody else somewhere. They impact many, many people for the rest of their lives. So what we need to change, what we need to do is, we already know how to do this. And I think that's part of Gordon's point, right? Is we really do know how to deal with these things. It's about getting the courage to execute and the will to execute. And you see it happening here, and I hope that that's an example. And yeah, go ahead, Bill.
You bring up a great point in highlighting what Tony was talking about. Time has the tendency to heal, but time also has the tendency to bear truth. And unfortunately, many line of duty deaths were due to errors, failure to follow training, failure to follow your officer. I just did a piece entitled Alone Again Naturally, because the last 3 line of duty deaths of building fires, the firefighters were found by themselves. And we go back to our basics, and you're never supposed to be alone. There's always supposed to be somebody with you, right, left, behind you, where was your officer, all that. But my point of that is, we're not going to talk about those right away because they're so sensitive, they're raw, and I get that. Whether I like it or not, it doesn't matter. The fact is, you got to respect the healing process. You got to respect the family. In some cases, you got to respect the legal process before the lawsuits are done. But in the end, when you listen to a program like Tony's or what Ian's doing, or any of that stuff, eventually you're going to learn the mistake. And we've got to be able to share that, and we are doing that. It just takes a couple of years to get that out, because again, the wounds are very, very sore, very open, and it's very painful. But when you're found alone in a building fire, there's a problem. We need to find out why that firefighter was alone. When you're killed on the 2nd floor of a single family dwelling, the fire was in the basement, but they're opening up the roof without coordination, and the fire draws right up on the crew and kills them on the 2nd floor. We've got to learn that stuff. And again, we're much better than we used to be. The NIOSH report points it out without calling names, and it's important. We never gloss over what really happened, but we do it respectfully because these are our sisters and brothers. But we do it so we can learn, because as you guys said in the beginning, I think Pete, you said it, or Tony, we say we never forget, but half the time we don't even know. When we give them the truth, the facts, that's the best way to honor those who died doing this job.
So what about, I went real quick. What about one that goes right? So yesterday, right, I'm talking to these guys from Wilmington. They haven't talked much about this fire. And the one guy, he survived. He fell into the basement. He says that he immediately thought about his training, and he turned into a ball and controlled his breathing and survived. That's if we don't get that out, then when we go to the training, and I was telling them too, I'm like, I remember going to training and I'm like, we're never going to use this. Why am I doing this? And look at this. This guy did it, and now he's going to pass this on, right? Just like there's really one documented case of use of the RIT pack, right? We spend a lot of time working on the RIT pack. We spend a lot of time. There's one documented case of it being used and successfully. Do we know, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing that has to get out. It's buried into one of these death reports, one of these line of duty death things. So, I mean, that's how we have to bring this stuff up, or else it's going to be, why are we wasting our time with this?
So, and before I mention anything else, if anybody out there that's watching this, if you have questions, please, now's the time. Where else are you going to get a group of individuals like this that all together that you can ask questions of? So please submit your questions as we're going through here. And Brad French is going to look at those. But here's the thing, and this is what the challenge is that, you know, Tony mentioned the one good thing that happens. Well, and never forget means never forgetting. But, you know, again, we're all getting older, we're all leaving the service, and those of us that have the passion or that have this desire, we have to continue this and pass it along to generations. Today's generations, they, like Chief Goldfeder pulls up his phone. We have got to be able to do these things to where we package these to deliver it to these generations that are used to this. How? Let's do that. What are the key pieces of doing that so it's all in one spot? Because what's happening is, like we mentioned, Worcester or Charleston. Okay, or here's my favorite. An entire generation of firefighters have come and are retiring since Keokuk, Iowa. Those that are watching that don't know about Keokuk, long story short, 3/5 of an on-duty strength of a fire department died in a fire. Okay, 3 out of the 5 on-duty people. Balloon frame. I got balloon frames that are going to be lasting forever in my town long after I'm gone. You have members on the job that they weren't even born when this took place. So how do we keep that alive? How do we keep that alive and package it so it's not just that report, that they know that it's, I got to go out and look at my balloon frame houses in Elyria to understand what took place in Keokuk could happen to me here, that it wasn't just 20 years ago. Whether it's my kids who are all in their 20s, they always look, what's in the past is in the past. It's not going to affect me. Oh, that you're old, Dad. That's the trouble. That is our focus. That is, in my opinion, and I want you all, once I shut up here, for you all to get on and talk about that. But that is what I find is the problem, is that kids today that are my kids' age, they look at the past and that's it. It's up to us to keep it going and to teach them.
Can I jump in for a second?
You got it.
Do we have a hard stop at the top of the hour?
No, at 5:30 Eastern.
Let me ramble here for a second. 20 years ago, July 10, 2001, we lost 4 wildland firefighters up in Washington State. The 30-mile fire, firefighters Craven, Fitzpatrick, Weaver, and Johnson. And I was doing a lot of work with the Forest Service back then. And I had an idea, and it's playing off what you just talked about, Chief. Have any of you played a video game called You Don't Know Jack? You Don't Know Jack. Have you played that? You know, I bought that for my daughter when she was like 5 years old, and it's a trivia game with a very rude host. And when you miss something, he insults the hell out of you, and it becomes very competitive, et cetera, et cetera. And it's trivia. So obviously, I'm going to beat my 5-year-old daughter. You know, it's trivia. She doesn't know these things. When she was 7, you know, she was learning more, 8, 9, 10. Well, little do I know, she goes out with her mom and buys You Don't Know Jack 6. And she plays with it for about a month, all by herself. And then, hey, Dad, you want to play You Don't Know Jack? And, well, of course. I'm old. I know all the trivia. You don't know Jack. She beat me like a redheaded stepchild. She had memorized it, 1,000 clues, and she had memorized them. She even memorized the insults on this, and she was very proud of herself. So what I wanted to do for the United States Forest Service, when you look at their deaths, it gets down to the 10 standing fire orders and the 18 watch-out situations. They don't pay attention to that. So why don't we have a You Don't Know Jack game about the 10 standing fire orders and the 18 watch-out situations, where we put different scenarios and make people tell us what the answer is, make it competitive. I would be happy without charge to be the rude host. You don't know jack about building construction. You don't know jack about car fires. You don't know jack about interior work, you know, and you guys could put together these very brilliant things. We could put it into a national program. We could use it to fund some of these great things like the National Fallen Firefighters, the Cancer Network, the things that we're trying to do. This could work for all of us and make it a national program where we could pass it on from one generation to the next. And Joe, you were right on the button. People are leaving with all this institutional knowledge and we never hear from them again. And they'll sit back at home and they'll watch 4 firefighters end up dead and they'll say, you know what? I knew that was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen. They should have been doing this, this, and this. We need to capture these people, get them into this program. You don't know Jack, make it a living legacy for the fire service. And I think we could change the world with something like that. These kids love the video games. They love competition. They want to know more than everybody else. They're already used to this mode. I think we could work on that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the video game aspect, and one of the things that we need to capture as training officers, again, this is the Society of Fire Service Instructors. When there is a incident, I always remember this from Chief Goldfeder. He tells a story about Worcester in '99 when everybody had the pagers, when you would get the incidents across your pager. Well, now it's your cell phone. And if you can sign up for these incident pages or whatever, and you get these, well, then you can go to a website where you can listen to the radio traffic. So when these things are happening, they're there. So again, we want to honor our brothers and sisters, but we have to rise above the Monday morning quarterbacking that comes out right away on social media. But it takes people that are here, like right here, with the mindset of we need to capture these things, the radio, the video, and do it the right way. And it takes intelligent people like you guys, and passionate people like me and Brad and others to grab that audio, grab the video, but don't say, well, look at those, they screwed up. Take it, put it together, and put the puzzle together to show your troops or to put it into a package. I don't see that happening as much. I see more Monday morning quarterbacking. And anyway, somebody else take over. Chief.
Well, yeah, I mean, Monday morning quarterbacking, I don't know why that got such a bad name sometimes, unless we need to talk about how that game was horrible on Sunday and how badly the team performed. I have no problem talking the truth. If I don't get a couple of hate letters a week, it's not a good week. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and sharing the truth and making people talk about this stuff. So we do need to talk about it. It does need to get out there, and whether it's through Gordon's idea of a game, which I think is actually a pretty cool idea, and I'm sure that we can probably get Lexipol to help with that. They've got some great technical people over there, and maybe that's what we're going to do for ISFSI. or whatever, we've got to talk about it. We've got to get it out there. And you know what? If you're a lieutenant, a captain, a chief, if everybody's loving you, you're not doing your job. You got to sometimes push the limit. You got to talk about the stuff they don't want to talk about. And I mean, as long as you have the facts, I'm not talking about gossip. And if that's what we're talking about, Monday morning quarterbacking, then I have no tolerance for that. But if we're talking about facts, I mean, if we're seeing, if you got a video of a firefighter walking in a building wearing only an air pack, no gear, wearing shorts and flip-flops, we don't need a whole lot of argument that, oh, well, he's a brother and all that. No, he's not. He's a moron. And why is he doing that? And that kind of stuff. So I'm with you. I think that we need to be more factual, more honest, and bring it out there and carry it on.
Well, I think that you're talking, I mean, let's do this at the kitchen table.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Let's not do this on social media. You're absolutely right about that.
That's what I meant.
That's where I think, but again, Billy and all of us we sat at the kitchen table and we did these things.
Still do.
Right. And if it's one of those things where I would never do that, well, okay, here comes your chance. It's going to come around. So, I mean, this is, hopefully it challenges us more than it we're throwing I mean, we should look at ourselves and think, oh, well, this could have been me, or what were they? Hopefully we're the guys who's leading it is saying, hey guys, what do you think that they saw when they what would make them do this? Because nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to go to a fire today and die.
After the 30 Mile fire, I helped the Forest Service build a program called 6 Minutes for Safety. And the original genesis of this program was, the first month, there's only 10 ways that wildland firefighters could end up dead. And I started this program, and every training bulletin started off with this. This is exactly how you're going to die today. Very direct, very blunt. And it got into falling trees and snags and lightning and snakes and the 10 and the 18 and all that stuff. Billy, you talk about hate mail. You should have seen the hate mail. Well, that's very blunt. This is exactly how you're going to die today. Well, being dead is like very blunt, and you need to wake up to this stuff. Bad things happen on wildland fires. But again, there's no black swans here. They're gray rhinos. The group knows, the individuals don't. And tell me when to shut up. But I've got this 6-step approach in my head on how to make the knowledge of all the knowledge of one. Number 1, better investigations. Number 2, learning from the investigations. Number 3, learning from the close calls. Number 4, downloading the best of the best when they leave. Mary, if I have 100 firefighters in a room, I'm just being very blunt. I don't need any more friends. I'm old. I'm married to a wealthy woman. I don't need any more friends. If I got 100 firefighters in a group, I know that 10 of them don't want to be there. This is a bunch of crap. I know that 80, 85 are good people who will do what they're told. And then there's 5 to 10 who want to change the world, like all of you people, and make things better. Grab those people on the way out the door. Hey, Mary, hey, John, you're leaving us next year. Tell us the 3 most important things you did in the fire service at every job you had. Firefighter, company officer, battalion chief. How did you do it? How would you do it better next time? Put it into little vignettes where we could capture this and then start off training days with this stuff. Bringing back the best of the best. Like you guys retire. Why don't we bring back the old people who know this stuff? Well, Gordon, technology's changed, equipment changed. The basic principles of safety have not changed. We can do something about this. And the final step of my 6-step approach is what I'm trying to do with my company, is deliver this through a knowledge management system to the endpoint user, where using artificial intelligence and a questionnaire, I can learn all about that person who's logging on to my daily training bulletins and send them a training bulletin specific to their region of the country, specific to their job in the fire service, specific to the core critical task that is most likely to end up with them being dead. That's my 6-step approach on this stuff, and I've got a commitment to make that thing happen.
Let me tag back onto that, if I can, Joe, just real quick to tie it into the day-to-day. You walk in any firehouse, we're the biggest critics of the crooks at City Hall, the corrupt politicians, this guy's doing that. We got an opinion on everything, but yet we're sitting around the firehouse for 24 hours collecting our paycheck, but maybe that lieutenant hasn't even gotten off their ass to do a training, to throw some ladders, to stretch some lines. So, you know, the company, and I always go back to that. You know, we have no problem taking our paycheck. I guarantee you we're making sure the paycheck is exactly what it's supposed to be based upon our overtime calculations and the square rooting that we're all experts in. I get that, right? But yet sometimes when I'll say to a lieutenant, so how did you spend the last 24 hours? Well, we did this, we had a great meal. Did you throw any ladders? Well, no. Did you put the aerial up? Well, no. Did you start the saws? Well, we have to in the morning. I mean, that's part of it. I mean, you're collecting a paycheck, for God's sake. And look, if you're volunteer, which many of the folks are as well, you accepted the responsibility, you accepted the position. Just do your job. I mean, again, we are so critical, whether it's our criticism toward Trump, our criticism toward Biden, our criticism toward anybody out there. But yet we need to look at ourselves in the mirror and make sure we're managing our little world. What's your responsibility? What are you supposed to be doing today? I think if company officers spent more time doing that, we'd have a lot more chiefs sleeping better at night.
Yep. Billy, you make me laugh with this because when I talk to cops, oh, it's Black Lives Matter. That's the problem. No, it's the city council. That's the problem. Oh, no, it's the left-wing news media. That's the problem. Oh, no, it's the anti-police, it's Antifa. It's this, it's this, it's this. No, most of our problems are self-generated. Just shut up and get better at what you do. Make excellence the norm, not the deviation. And we complain about all the external stuff when most of this is our own darn fault. You show me a death in the fire service, I'm going to show you a proximate cause of X. The real problem lying in wait all too often is a supervisor not behaving like a supervisor. Or in the alternative, a supervisor who tried to behave like a supervisor and got no support from management. If either of those is present, that's a problem lying in wait. On any given day, nobody knows where the fire chief is. Everybody knows who their supervisor is, and some of these idiots will modify their behavior based on which supervisor is on duty. Or as my grandmother used to say, when the cat's away, the mice will play. We got to get these supervisors recognizing what their job is taking people on, holding people accountable, understanding policy. You know, and if you can't do that, then demote. You have chosen to promote. Nobody put a gun to your head and said, you got to do it. You got to go out there. You know, and I'll bore you with one more thing. We had a little thing going on the highway patrol back when I retired. If they liked you, they'd allow you to promote one rank higher on the last day. It wasn't a pay thing. Nobody's getting ripped off, but it was a title thing. So I filled out all the forms to be a chief, and in the middle of it, the politics got involved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they asked me, what's the most important thing you've done in the highway patrol? What's the most important thing you've done? I put it down. For 10 years, I was a shift commander. I put out 50 cops a day on afternoon shift. Most of them with less than a year on the job. And in 10 years, the worst injury I had was one idiot fell off his motorcycle and broke his leg. All my cops went home. And, you know, and I sent that up to headquarters. You should have seen the response. Gordon, put down that you started the DRE program. That's not the most important thing I did. Put down that you started the Office of General Counsel. Put down that you started the risk management program. We're losing focus here. The most important thing I did was making sure that all of my people went home every day. That's what I'm proud of. You know, in a high-risk world, you got to take care of these people, and that's a supervision issue. And again, I'm fed up with this stuff. We can do something about this.
Brad, did you?
One thing. Let me say one thing real quick, and it kind of builds on to what they're saying, right? The company officer is the most important cog in our wheel, right? And training, the company training, I think, is the most important. For the long time of my career, one thing that I could depend on in every firehouse in the city was at 8:30 we're going to clean up, right? Every firehouse cleans up at 8:30, but not every firehouse gets out and does any training. Not everyone does. The citizens out there I think that they would care less if our firehouse was clean, but they would definitely want us to show up and be able to do our job. Fast forward that to we should also be able to save ourselves and that kind of thing. So I mean, that's the company officer, I think, dilemma is, you know, we don't want to make anybody mad and we don't want to embarrass them, right? Because I think a lot of guys are afraid to train because they feel like they're going to be embarrassed about something. If we don't follow if they're not listening to Gordon and Billy and really take that responsibility, then they've missed that shot. And again, I'm just gonna push my thing, but take Mondays and practice survival stuff. Tuesdays do truck stuff. Wednesdays do water, whatever. But we have to make sure that we're still practicing these survival skills, because we don't use them, thankfully. Thankfully, we're not using them. But when that time comes, you need to be ready to be able to do it.
Fred, did you have a question out there? Did somebody submit a question?
Yeah, just there's been a lot of good. I just popped in here to kind of address some of these. There's been a lot of good discussion going on over in the question areas, and some of the highlights I wanted to throw out to the group here, and then you can kind of pick and choose where to go from there. But there was a comment made or a question asked about local or regional or state reports and how those sometimes differ from the NIOSH reports on the national level, and whether or not there's, and just kind of what your thoughts are on that. Are there things that are looked at differently or can be said in one report that can't really be said in another report, and things like that? Is there value in some of the different reports? I thought that was a good question. Let's see. Somebody also asked about Tony, you made reference to the incident where the RIT pack was used. I believe that was Southwest Inn in Houston, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right.
Captain
that was that captain, I think, that they were able to make the RIT pack connection to, that ended up passing away a time later, I believe.
Yes.
But anyway, that link is in the report there. And then also Steve Schaefer, our brother from up in Boston, was asking about resistance to change and things like that. That sometimes, in his experience, sometimes some of the younger members are a little bit more interested in some of the newer things as it relates to tactical decision making, but that senior members are often resistant to change of any kind, and any specific advice going forward as to how to bring them along, whether that be tactical decision making or getting interested in some of these reports. And it kind of is interesting because that tied back to a quote that Mary Sobek put up about good luck breeds bad habits. I wonder if people get so far in their career and they figure, well, I'm a 20, 25-year person, 35-year member, something like that. I've made it this far. How much more do I really need to invest as far as time and effort into studying some of these incidents? So just wanted to touch some of those questions from the audience here.
I'll start
rely on luck. You have to rely on process. Just because things end up okay does not mean we don't have problems lying in wait. And we're relying on luck way too much. Sooner or later, all the holes in the Swiss cheese get lined up, and boom, we got the tragedy. And then the lawyers get involved, the news media gets involved, and they take the organization apart, and they peel back the layers of the onion and show all this crap lying in wait that everybody knew about, and nobody's doing a darn thing about it. We can fix this, though. Joe, I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Well, to Gordon's point, when we do our presentations, when you look at the line of duty deaths, it's a chain of events. To your point, Gordon. It's not one thing typically that kills a firefighter. There's 10, there's 12 things, and one thing goes wrong. And the fact is, most of the time we get lucky. And that's it. When there's close calls, nothing breaks that chain seriously enough for a line of duty death. But the majority, if you watch these presentations, there's 10 or 12 things that happen, and one of them that broke that chain that caused a line of duty death. It's not one particular thing.
One of the things I wanted to catch, one of the questions out there, and while we're all together, obviously I want your opinion, but somebody asked about internal reports or independent reports or whatever in NIOSH. And I will say this, in my experience in talking with some chiefs that have done both, I found, and for those that want an answer from me, I would say if you only have so much time in the day, the internal reports will sometimes give you more information, more pictures, more, because in talking to the chief in Bryan, Texas, he said that, some of the things NIOSH came in and out. Their budget, it's a budget. They can't spend months there. They can't spend weeks there. So when I was talking to him, he says, their own internal report was exactly that. It was a deep dive into what took place. So one of the, and then also in a town near Cincinnati, Hamilton, Ohio, lost a firefighter in a basement fire. And I went there to teach a class a couple years ago, and they're still trying to recover. But when I sat down with the members there, the IC that night, and the fire chief, they too looked, there were some differences in the NIOSH report versus the internal report. And it did lead to some issues, but the bottom line is this: the internal reports, if you can find them, read them, share them. They're out there for a reason, and they're a little bit more in depth. But just curious what you guys think as far as an interior report or an outside report compared to government.
Yeah, Billy can speak to this more definitively, but I've been involved in a couple of them, and on both ends of it, And one of the things I think everybody listening and that we should convey is it's not an investigation, it's a report, right? So there's no cross-examination, there's no holding your toes to the coals or anything. What that department shares is what gets reported, okay? And that's an important aspect of the NIOSH report, right? They want the cooperation, they want to be invited in, those sorts of things. So it's important, but it's also a limitation. The internal investigations tend to be more investigations, okay? And so they come up with more information. They might be a little bit more inquisitive as they're interviewing members and things like that. So they both have their value, and you can learn from both. And I would suggest that anytime you can get a hold of one of those, locally done internal investigations, you make good use of it for that reason. Billy, did I speak accurately to that? Or?
Absolutely, Pete. Yeah. Now, the NIOSH also, everybody needs to understand too, that a draft of the NIOSH report is sent to two groups. One, it's sent to a group of subject matter experts, one or two folks who will look at it, who were not at the incident, but have some experience. And it will also be sent to the chief of department for a review to make sure it's accurate. Now, I'm unaware of NIOSH ever pulling information out because the department didn't want it there because they didn't like it. I'm aware of NIOSH reports that have been altered because something might have been missed or whatever. But I would stand on whatever we need to stand on to assure you what you read in a NIOSH report is absolutely accurate. But again, it is subject to the review. Now, if you look at the culture of the fire department involved, you're going to see different reports for different fire departments. There's some departments, like I told you, some of the biggest departments in our country have told NIOSH to not come in. And there's a good reason for that, because they don't want that information out. And any internal report was a sham. But that's hardly the case in the vast majority. In most cases, like Pete said, get both reports, read both. That will give you. But I will tell you, the folks at NIOSH are the highest integrity folks. But again, they have a great system, in my opinion, where they always send a draft report out for someone who was not involved, doesn't know the department, but has, like, if it's a high-rise fire in Los Angeles, they may send that to Vinny Dunn to review. He knows nobody really there. They're going to get an honest opinion here. Here's my opinion. Do what you want with it. Or if it's a dwelling fire in Idaho, it may go to a chief in Florida, that kind of thing. But absolutely, like anything, you want to do a full size up. So if you're studying a line of duty death, do a full size up. Look at all sides of it. Google it. Go to YouTube. Every once in a while, I'll find a video of a fire on there. The fire department doesn't even know a civilian posted. So exactly what Pete's saying there and what Joe's saying, do a full review, as I like to call it, do a full 360, right? Make sure you get all the facts.
One of the things we find most valuable when we go through the internal report, and I agree there are some that are not very good, but the majority are outstanding, especially when they're more objective and use external resources to help with that internal. I'll use one of the best ones I've seen, Asheville, North Carolina. Chief Scott Burnett convened that report. Captain Jeff Bowen died in a medical office building fire. What he considered a routine fire, and that's another thing you'll see as a common theme when we go through these. This is a routine fire. They're thinking they're going to be in and out in 10 minutes, and it's all going to be good, and things obviously go downhill. But he had over 200 recommendations. So the piece of the recommendations to improve operations, they went everything from error management systems to staffing. Some cost absolutely nothing. Obviously, some cost budget implications, but over 200 and some recommendations was a huge. And we find those recommendations of the department and what they implement to improve the process and make it better and to truly honor the firefighters so it doesn't happen again are huge in the process.
As we are running short on time here, I'd like to go around each one of you now. Chief Goldfeder, you mentioned, the Google and to get into it, but one thing from each of you to a training officer out there, one thing that you would that one solid takeaway that you want them to lay in bed tonight and go, Ian?
I'd say to sum up, learn from our past. And I think that to Tony's point, and then Gordon talked a little bit about it, not just line of duty deaths, close calls are huge. I met Billy, my God, I don't know how many years ago. We had a close call in the department I worked at. We had a smoke explosion and we bailed 2 guys out of a window. And to talk about the chain of events, we got lucky. I mean, the chain of events didn't get broken and everything, everybody was fine. Nobody got hurt, but he did a great story in Firehouse of it. Learn from those as well. LA City is doing a heck of a job. Nathan Espinoza video, Go Down Swinging. He fell through a commercial roof. And Chief Perez is very blunt in this video. It's on firehero.org, you can go to it and said, what are we doing on a roof in a commercial building that's unoccupied? And he's very blunt about how they changed the process. So yes, learn from line of duty, but learn from close calls, learn from people. Billy talked about the size up and what are they thinking about? Well, we can do that from close calls as well. And people that actually survived, we know what the process went through and how it was. So, learn, take it to heart. I like what people have talked about here. Make sure that the company officer is the key to this and that they're doing some research on it, whether it's putting the videos, whether it's a Google, whatever that is, to get the complete picture of those incidents.
Gordon?
Predictable is preventable.
Tony?
I think just pay attention. As a firefighter, fire officer, pay attention to what's going on. We have so much information now. We have so many ways to get information that, pay attention to what you're seeing and bring it back to your people. And hopefully they'll learn from it. Whether it's a line of duty death, a close call, whether it's, what we're seeing with training and things that are going on. But just pay attention. The fire service got a lot of good stuff out there, and you don't have to go too far, but just pay attention.
Pete?
I'm going to do 2 things if you don't mind. One, do as Tony does. Make it personal, make it real, tie it to your department, tie it to your experience, tie it to the drill you're going to do. Don't just read the report and say, these are the lessons we're going to learn, right? He's making it more real in a very practical, doable way. You can imitate that. It's free, take advantage of that. Second thing is involve the crew. This can't be a one-off, a one-way thing. And I'll give you an example. A buddy of mine, they have a writing board, like, who's working today, who's writing, right? And what are their sheet assignments? One of those positions is a line of duty death from that day, right? And one of the members has to research that line of duty death, and at roll call, they talk about that line of duty death and how that guy died, and he rides with them that day, right? So you involve the crew, you make it personal, you make it real. Those are my two things.
Good for you.
Chief Goldfeder?
I'm going to copy Pete and take just 2 things. One is actually a comment. You talked about the chief, Ian, you talked about the chief in LA, and what really popped in my head just now is, so he's pushed that whole incident, but when he's gone, who's going to push it? So I'm going to revert to what Gordon says. We must have systems in place that cannot allow us to lose what's happened in the past. So I would say to training officers, develop systems that automatically your folks are being educated, informed, build it into your training program, but build it in so if you're gone next week, it still gets carried on. And the one message, Joe, you said, what would we ask a training officer that, before they go to bed at night is their dream or what they would want? And that's to push your company officers into this. Don't worry about anything other than making sure your lieutenants and captains are carrying on the message you want. I just can't emphasize enough how critical it is that person in the firehouse doing their job. Big deal. Thanks.
Well, Billy, we all know their dream is to be a motorcycle cop, but I like your point also.
If you couldn't get on the LA City Police, you went for the California Highway Patrol.
All right, so we are getting towards the end here. We're going to go ahead and start to kind of wrap this process up. A couple of things I kind of wanted to throw out there. I've really thoroughly enjoyed listening to this over the past 90, 80 minutes here or so, and have so much respect for the panelists on here today, and I've learned a lot from them. A couple of the things that popped up in my head that I figured I could maybe toss in as we get closer to signing off here. When we start to talk about instruction, that's what we're doing today, right? This is the ISFSI, the International Society of Fire Service Instructors. When we start to talk about instructing and getting down into the weeds a little bit, we talk about cognitive and psychomotor and affective domains, the 3 domains of learning, right? Well, these NIOSH reports, these line of duty death reports, these incidents, these are the key to the affective domain, right? And what I mean by that is you're teaching skills in psychomotor, and you're teaching them things to regurgitate on testing when it comes to cognitive. But you've got to make them care. You've got to make them care about whatever that drill is. Before you start talking about hose lines, talk to them about a line of duty death that involved, moving hose lines or something like that, right? Talk to them about, you want to talk about water application, bring up, Homewood or something along those lines, or Ladle Avenue in Cincinnati or whatever, right? Bring up an incident that sets the stage, that is the hook. Hook that student, right? Before you just come in and start talking about what the topic is, set the hook in that student by presenting one of these incidents. Make them care. And the other thing you're doing, and Gordon, I want to kick it right back to you. You've got something else that I want to make sure we get. But something that I've, from years ago, listening to some of Gordon's lectures, the concept of recognition prime decision making and having slides in the slide tray and things like that. By learning from others' experiences, we don't just add slides to the slide tray by experiencing it ourselves. I would certainly think that we can add slides to our mental subconscious slide tray by reading and learning from others as well. Gordon, did you have something else?
I sure did. I'm not a TV person, but there's that show on called Friends. Remember that? They got the Friends reunion, and I watched that because Mrs. Graham wanted to watch it. And what I was fascinated by on that is you read the script. There are words on a piece of paper, and they don't make any sense, and it's not funny at all. But then the actors read the words and put their own personality into it, and it is funnier than heck. They're just words on a piece of paper. NIOSH is words on a piece of paper. How that instructor delivers that information to the endpoint user, the trainee, that's the key. You can get up there, and then this happened, and then this happened. No, you get up there and be involved in this thing. Get involved. Break it personal, as I've heard several times today. Get in people's faces. Hey, what are you going to do if this happens? And bring it alive. Make people want to learn these things. Liven it up quite a bit. Anybody can say the words off a NIOSH report, but getting the meaning in the words and getting the endpoint user to get fired up, that's what we need to do.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Thanks very much to our panelists today, Joe Pronesti, Ian Bennett, Pete Van Dorp, Billy Goldfeder, Tony Carroll, and Gordon Graham. They're all very, very busy, just as Chief Van Dorp said earlier. Very awesome for them to give us of their time, including Chief Goldfeder that's on vacation at the moment. So thanks all very much for tuning in to this happy hour with the ISFSI on a very important topic. And hopefully you continue to stay involved in ISFSI stuff and catch us on the next one. I'm sure we'll be back next month. So thanks all very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Joe, for putting this together. Nice job.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks
gentlemen.
for being with us.